cause that be natural.
Lady
I ain't
D.
looking tacky. I keep my game tactful.
Yo.
Yeah, I'm so nappy.
M.O.B.
Cause that be natural.
The infamous.
I ain't looking tacky cause I keep my game tactful.
I'm so pretty, I'm so fat, boo. I'm so natural, it's like it's a taboo. I'm so filthy, got the tattoo stuck in these bitches like I own ragu. On my business with my platoon, getting these minutes like I'm a typhoon. Y'all this jersey on that cartoon and I'm still on top.
And welcome back to Afros and Baby Hairs, and thank you for joining me in the reading room for book review number 16 on the Lipstick Clique 2. So if you are interested in hearing details about this book as well as my thoughts and opinions, then please stay tuned. I do not promote this book to anyone who is under the age of 18. If you are under the age of 18, then please get your parents' consent and or supervision before reading this book. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, we can get into this book review. So I'm going to start off by reading the back of the book. And this is the Lipstick Clique 2, written by David Weaver. And the back of the book reads, "The United States government wants Treasure's head on a platter. Wanted for escaping prison, murders, robberies, and carjackings, she knows that the reward for her capture is too great for her to be able to trust any person. She has been all over the country trying to find a safe haven, but it seems that trouble continues to find her no matter where she goes. Despite all of the madness that takes place, in essence, she is still a woman. And no matter how bad she wants a man to be there for her, she knows that for the amount of money that the government is offering for her capture, she will turn her own self in. But that doesn't stop her from wanting to feel like a woman. This is pure romantic adrenaline rush at its finest, and with an ending so sharp that it will make you throw your Kindle into the wall in disbelief." So I'm going to start off by telling you guys about the new characters that appear in the Lipstick Clique 2. So we have Shalisha, who is an older chick who was locked up with Treasure, who was actually from Madison, Wisconsin, and has recently been released. We have Nero, who is supposed to be Shalisha's man. And then you have Nero's wife and daughter. And then Mazzy, a friend of Shalisha's from the street, and her husband, who is a detective. And together they are he's a dirty cop. And then you have Jonathan and Jack. These are the crazy white boys who are actually girls. And then you have Ashley, who is a store clerk, and then a truck driver who is actually a fugitive as well. So this book basically starts off with Treasure being in a new area of Madison, Wisconsin, and she links up with her friend from prison who has just been released. Her name is Shalisha, and she is from the area. She is willing to help Treasure out by giving her a place to lay low. However, things start to get wild within hours of them being together. First thing is Shalisha and Treasure need a whip, so they cop a ride together. Then Shalisha notices Treasure has guns and want one, so Treasure gives her one. Then Shalisha wants to go inside of McDonald's and order a burger because she's been locked up so long and wanted to be able to go inside of McDonald's and order a burger. Even though Treasure really wasn't feeling it because she has been plastered all over the news as a prison escapee and doesn't want to draw any attention to herself. However, she ended up going in anyways after Shalisha convinces her that no one will recognize her. Anyway, they go in and Shalisha orders a burger with extra mayo, no onions, no pickles. But the girl ended up giving her order wrong. So Shalisha called the girl out of her name, and the girl snapped back, and suddenly Shalisha pulls out her gun and jumps on the counter, threatening the lady who gave her the order. Treasure ended up intervening to make it look like a robbery. Next thing, they go to Shalisha's man's house, who Shalisha hasn't seen in 15 years, but he made sure to write her and keep money on her books during her bid. He also promised her that he was going to wait for her until she got out and remain faithful. However, she and the dude, Nero, embraced, kissed, and tried to catch up. Soon thereafter, Shalisa was ready to get him to the bedroom. Nero really wasn't budging. In fact, he was acting as if he were afraid of Shalisha, and moments later, we find out why. His wife and daughter come barging in the apartment. Nero had been married for the last 8 years and had a 6-year-old daughter. The wife introduced herself as Nero's wife, and Shalisa just told the lady she was an old friend of his who was just visiting because she just made it back in town. She left soon thereafter, and she was hurt and confused. Treasure was sitting in the parking lot of the apartments waiting on her, in the stolen car. So Shalisa pulled herself together and was too embarrassed to tell Treasure what she had just experienced. So she lied to her like she didn't want Treasure just sitting in the car while she was inside handling her business. Either way, Treasure had seen the woman and child go into the same apartment Shalisa went into. Shalisa takes Treasure to this house to lay low. The house actually belongs to Shalisa. It was given to her by her grandmother. The key was under the mat in front of the front door. Nero had been taking care of the house while Shalisa was locked up. Either way, she let Treasure in and told her that she would be going to spend time with her man, but she would be gone for a few days. Shalisa ended up going back over to Nero's house. She parked in front of the apartment, but got out of the car and waited in the bushes for his wife to leave. When the wife finally left, she went to talk to Nero. During their conversation, we found out that Nero had been writing her and selling her a fantasy just to keep her spirits up while she was doing time. He kept money on her books and took care of the house her grandmother gave her because Shalisha was actually doing time for him. He actually committed the robberies and murdered the people that were the victims in these robberies, but he ended up bringing the weapon to her, and because she didn't know he had murdered anyone, she just thought it was a robbery. So when the cops showed up, she told them that she had done it. So of course, after she heard what Nero had to say, she was hurt and ready to leave. She gave him the bag of money she had taken from McDonald's during the robbery, and she gave it to him as payback for keeping money on her books. And she was leaving. As she was leaving, she saw a cop snooping around the stolen car. She had driven over there, so she decided to walk a different way and leave the car there. She was also too embarrassed to go to her grandmother's house with Treasure. Plus, she wanted to give Treasure her space, so she decided to go to a shelter instead. The shelter ended up turning her away, so she ended up going back to her old stomping ground. However, she really didn't want to because she knew she would be headed for trouble. The cops ended up arresting Nero because basically they were trying to tie him to the McDonald's robbery because the getaway car was in front of his apartment and he had the money in the McDonald's bag in his possession. During the arrest, the wife basically told him she wasn't going to wait on him and couldn't believe he had gone back to his old ways, even though he kept trying to tell her it was a misunderstanding. Later, we found out that Nero is a snitch and had given up all he knew about Shalisha and the robbery. However, the goal was to turn her over to them. Shalisha ended up linking up with her friend Mazzy, who was married to a dirty detective. She told Shalisa someone was snitching on her, but if she wanted to stay free, she would have to work for her by linking up with the crazy white boys so that she could basically pay for her freedom. Shalisa had gotten so high and drunk hanging out with Mazzy that when she fell asleep, Mazzy took the gun that Treasure had given her earlier. Either way, as Shalisa was about to pull her gun on Mazzy, Mazzy let her know that she had it and that the streets had changed since she had been locked up. She ended up giving Shalisha a phone so that she could link up with the crazy white boys and sent her on her way. She walked to a local store to wait for them to contact her. Treasure was sitting in the living room catching up on the news when she heard a knock at the door. She thought it might have been Shalisha coming back, but when she looked out of the peephole, she sees that it was the cops. First thing she thought was her girl had set her up. So she ran to get her gun and came back to the door Then she heard the cops say that their snitch had told them that Shalisa was staying there and that they would return later since she wasn't home then. Treasure decided then that she needed to find Shalisa and tell her that her man was a snitch. And then Treasure was going to leave town because she was all over the news for being a prison escapee and for robbing the McDonald's. Later, Treasure gathered her money and left the house walking, only to be followed by a cop who was asking her, did she come out of their house? Treasure ended up murking the cop, but also knew that the cop cars had cameras, so she ended up scooping a Honda from someone's driveway. Once she got in and hotwired the car to get it started, she realized it was on E. She ended up going through the drive-thru at a Krispy Kreme just to rob them. Then she barely made it to the convenience store to get gas. And when she walked in, she was posted on both television screens in the store as America's Most Wanted, or something to that effect. Either way, the cashier was acting like she was a fan of Treasure's. When she realized Treasure was in the store, then she offered Treasure the store's money and the money from the safe. Treasure ended up taking the money, and she took the cashier and the cashier's car. She ended up duct taping the girl's mouth, hands, and feet because she didn't trust her. As soon as she made it from the store's parking lot to the nearest red light, she looked back and saw the police surrounding the store and going in from all angles, and knew that the store clerk had set her up, and she was glad that she had kidnapped her. They ended up in a dark alley so that Treasure could think, but the girl was still trying to ask Treasure to let her go through the duct tape. Treasure ended up removing the duct tape from the girl's mouth, and the girl let out a scream. Treasure ended up, I'm thinking, at a truck stop, ducked off between some 18-wheelers just to get some sleep. Soon thereafter, she was awakened by a truck driver who had knocked on her window. She let down the window, and the truck driver basically told her that a snitch had spotted her and she needed to get out of there. When Treasure looked around, she saw a man pointing at her and talking to a couple of other people. Treasure ended up grabbing her money and getting in the truck with the truck driver, who knocked on her window. He didn't mind her ride with him, and he left heading to Florida, where Treasure had just left before she came to Wisconsin. Shalisa is still waiting at the store and gets a call from the crazy white boys asking where is she. Shalisa notices that they sound like they were girls, but gives them her location. Soon she sees a white truck approaching, but it was Nero coming to tell her he loves her and wants to be with her. Also informs her that he will be leaving town in 3 days and wants her to come with him. He then puts his phone number and her phone on speed dial under the number 7. Soon thereafter, the crazy white boys show up, who were indeed white girls, who went by the names of Joshua and Jack. She decided to go on and handle business with them, since at that point, she is thinking Treasure is snitching on her and Mazzy has threatened her freedom. So she hopped in the truck with the white girls and they headed to a mobile home for the night. Shalisa crashes on the couch. Nero went home to basically break up with his wife, who was so ready to leave him at the first sign of trouble. Treasure was riding in the truck with the truck driver and ended up turning on the radio. Through the radio, the truck driver learned that Treasure was a prison escapee, had a clique of girls called the Lipstick Clique who were running around Wisconsin terrorizing the city, and that there was an award for her arrest. Basically, they had changed the reward from $1 million to whatever amount the person wanted. After hearing this, Treasure started questioning the truck driver as to why he was so eager to help her, and went on snapping on the man. And after she settled down, he told her he was on the run too for killing his wife and had been on the run for 10 years. The 18-wheeler they were in was stolen, and he had his own money from robberies he had committed. Treasure knew then that the truck was tracked, so when they stopped, she ended up robbing the man for his stash and his gun. The crazy white boys woke Shalisa up around 8 a.m. so that they could go get money. They ended up at a Wells Fargo in the middle of a shopping court. The white girls handed Shalisa a vest to put on and headed into the bank. Shalisa was scared and confused at first because they didn't have weapons or a plan. Soon the white girls let her know that the vest was explosives, and all they had to do was press the button on the remote and everybody blows up. So they go in and the white boys get to business. Just pretty much tells the clerk to give them all the money or they all blow up. Then open their vest to show their explosive. Basically, the teller was doing all the work for them. Either way, the robbery goes smoothly. They leave with about $150K and head back out to the truck. There's a cop writing a ticket for them parking in a handicapped parking space. They take the ticket and head back out to the mobile home. Before they got out of the truck, they hand Shalisa the vest to put in the green duffel bag. When she opens the bag, she sees a gun in it. So she takes the gun and tucks it in her waist. Once they were inside, the white girls started counting the money and figured they have about $150K to split 3 ways, according to Shalisa. They are getting $50K apiece. However, the crazy white boys have other plans for her. They tell her that her cut has to go to Massey because it's her first time. And then after that, every 4th robbery, she has to pay Massey, and that's the deal. Shalisa wasn't trying to hear that and ended up shooting one of the white girls or boys and had a shootout with the other one. Then ran out of bullets. She went searching through the mobile home for more weapons until she found one that was fully loaded. Then there was a knock on the door. Of course, it was Mazzy coming to collect. However, Shalisa greeted her with bullets. Eventually, she ended up murking Mazzy, taking the money and the truck and heading off into the woods on some private property. There, she thought about all the events that had taken place. She cried because of the guilt she felt for killing. Soon, she called Nero, who had just recently been contacted by Mazzy's husband. Nero told her to keep the money on her and drop her weapon. Walk 40 feet this way and kick up some dirt. Walk another so many feet another way and stay there until she heard his voice. Finally, Nero was there. He found her by tracking her phone via GPS. He gave her a hug and kiss, took the bag of money and carried it for her like a gentleman as they walked to his vehicle. Then he opened his trunk, put the money in, and walked to the driver's side and got in as Shalisa stood waiting at the passenger side. Soon the cops were there and she was unarmed. Shalisa ended up back in jail and Nero had the $150K. Treasure ended up in Atlanta, Georgia. She went to the CNN building and there she found out that they had up-to-the-minute reports on her whereabouts and were reporting that they had last seen her getting out of a taxi there at the CNN building. She grabbed her things and ran, noticing cops everywhere. She hid amongst homeless people who were willing to help her, and they hid her for a fee. They hid her in a shopping cart under blankets before the cops approached them. They lied to the cops saying that she had run off saying she was going to steal a car. The police left running in the direction the homeless people said she had gone in. The homeless people rode her all the way to the Greyhound bus station, bought her some tickets for another part of Georgia, Florida, and one for Philadelphia. They also got her a cell phone. She ended up paying the homeless couple and their friend for helping her. Then she decided to lay low a few days before heading to Columbus, Georgia. Somewhere along the way, she ended up reaching out to the bankroll squad for help. When she got to Columbus, Georgia, she ended up seeing a guy parked in his car smoking a blunt. She approached the guy, asking him to get her a room in his name and offered to pay him. He agreed, went and got the room and bought her the room key. Then he invited Treasure to come to a party the Dirt Mob was throwing at some club. Treasure then confronted Dude about the second key card that was missing from the slipcover. They ended up going back and forth until she kneed him in the nuts and pulled her pistol on him. He finally gave her the other key, then dipped off the premises. Meanwhile, back in the Philippines, Catfish was mourning his wife's passing more and more. Malcolm and Kyla had noticed and discussed him and figured there wasn't much they could do at this point. Anyway, while jogging, Kyla had had an idea and decided to stop by Catfish's place where he was sitting on the porch. She asked Catfish did he know who Treasure was because she had reached out to her for help. To her surprise, Catfish knew exactly who Treasure was from keeping up with her through the American news, and he was infatuated by her. Kyla ended up asking Catfish if he knew anyone in America who could help her, and Catfish said yes, referring to himself. Kyla wasn't for Catfish going back to America, being that he was wanted, but Catfish had already put together a plan in a matter of minutes as to how he was going to do it. He asked for Treasure's info. Kyla wrote it down and was off to go tell Malcolm about what she had done. Catfish hit up his amigo from Mexico to fly him out. Next thing you know, Catfish was in Georgia with nothing but a sawed-off and a fresh pack of wife beaters in his duffel bag. He went to the hotel Treasure was supposed to be staying and didn't see anything but undercovers and cops around the vicinity. He popped a taxi and ended up making eye contact with Treasure, who was in another taxi headed to the club where the dirt mob was throwing their party. She was dressed in black from head to toe, ready to go murk 5 who had crossed her. Catfish ended up telling his cab driver to find out where they were going and to take him there as well. Meanwhile, Treasure had her gun tucked away in her black purse. She had paid the security $1,000 each to let her in with her pistol. Once she was inside, past security, it wasn't 5 minutes before 5 spotted her and began to beat her down. One of the security guards tried to intervene, but the rest of the dirt mob had 5's back, and 5 ended up reminding the security guard that this was his club and that the security guard could leave before he got dealt with. People who were at the club for the party started to leave because Treasure was being beaten. As people were leaving and talking, Catfish headed in and immediately knew that Treasure was in trouble. He entered the building with his shotgun out, making all of them pause and fold due to the hierarchy of the bankroll squad. Plus 5 is actually Malcolm's snitching little brother. Once he got them to yield, he called out to Treasure, who didn't know Catfish at all and thought he was there to take her out. He had to tell her that he was with the bankroll squad and he was there to help. He also asked her what did she want him to do. As much as she hated 5, she could not bring herself to have him murdered, but Catfish shot him in the knee anyway. Catfish tried to come on to Treasure, telling her how much she needed him and how much he needed her. Also told her hotel room was surrounded by cops. She stole a car from some dude in the parking lot of the club, and her and Catfish were rolling. Catfish was still trying to win her over, but she wasn't paying him any attention, and he wasn't paying any attention to their surroundings. However, Treasure noticed that they were being trailed by unmarked cars. She dipped off to a gas station and Catfish was pitching to her about coming to the Philippines with him. Treasure noticed that the cars that were following her were thrown off and they would have to catch up. So she told Catfish no pretty much, so he grabbed his bag and called a taxi. Treasure ended up paying a guy to swap cars with her at the gas station. She ended up paying him about $300K in money and drugs. They also swapped phones. The guy agreed to drive the car she gave him to his house and park it. She took off in his red Mercedes. Meanwhile, Catfish was in Mexico with his amigo at a bar and was interrupted by the news reports on Treasure. It was in Spanish, so he had his friend to translate. A few minutes later, Treasure was standing right behind him. She had ended up taking the private flight right with him. He just hadn't noticed her there. She decided to take Catfish up on his offer after all. 18 months later, the U.S. Marshal was holding a meeting with a group of inmates that were all facing life sentences or death row. And he was offering them the opportunity to be free again if they agreed to take down the bankroll squad. Among the group of our inmates were Shalisha, 5, Nero, and Malcolm, among others. Book ends. Now, my thoughts and opinions. The first thing is, I think Treasure never should have gone inside the McDonald's with her friend Shalisa. Her gut instincts told her that that was a bad idea. Plus, she wasn't even hungry. I think she should have followed her gut, and she wouldn't have been involved with that whole situation. The next thing, I don't know why Shalisa didn't just leave Dude B when she found out he was married. I also don't know why she just didn't tell Treasure what happened. If that was her girl and she trusted her, like, why didn't she tell Treasure that the dude had a wife and he was lying to her or whatever like that? And all of this other stuff could have been, you know, avoided that she went through. And number 3, like I just said, all of this other stuff that transpired in Shalisa's life, all because she didn't want Treasure to know Dude had played her. If she had just told Treasure what happened, they could have just went back to Shalisa's grandmother's house and chilled. But because she didn't want her to know, she ended up going back to Dude's house, giving him the robbery money and the stolen car, then going to a homeless shelter where she got into it with the director lady and got turned away. Then she ended up back in our old stomping ground, getting tangled up with Massey's mess, and from there to the crazy white boys robbing a Wells Fargo, then ended up killing them and Massey, and then back to the boyfriend setting her up to go straight back to prison, when none of this would have happened if she just had told Treasure the truth and not gone back to Dude's house. She should have known not to trust him anyway after what he done to her via the first setup 15 years ago. And then lying to her via letters for 15 years. Dude was not good to fool with based on that alone. Shalisa just seems to me to be very naive to be 34 years old. Number 4, I was surprised that Shalisa thought Treasure set her up and was snitching when Treasure didn't really give her a reason to think that. Like the book said, they met in prison when Treasure escaped, so she knew Treasure was on the run. So why would she turn around and start snitching? If she was to snitch, she would have turned, you know, that's her turning herself in. So that didn't make any sense to me. Number 5, I'm glad that Treasure and Catfish got together. They are cut from the same cloth. I wonder what they're going to get into because they seem very much alike, very much compatible. So I am shocked that 5 is Malcolm's brother. So does that mean that Grimmer and Danielle are Malcolm's family as well? They didn't never mention about those two. They just said 5. So that means when he told Treasure his last name was Powers, that's actually what he said. I don't know why he changed it later on to say his last name was Powers. So I am confused as to how Kyla and Malcolm got their daughter back. This book didn't mention anything about Milan, Tara, or Lena of the Lipstick Clique and what they were up to. Remember, in book 1, Lena and Tara ran off with the baby, and Milan was pulled back into the estate and was getting beat by Kyla. So how did they get the baby back? So the last thing, I am very confused about how Malcolm ended up back in prison signing up to be a snitch against his own organization. So I guess we'll have to get into the next book, the Power family, to see what we can get some answers on. Know in the comments below your thoughts on this series. What do you think is going to happen? Because right now it's getting pretty unpredictable at this point. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, opinions, any feedback that you have about this series thus far. So yeah, guys, I do want to thank you all once again for joining me in the reading room. I really appreciate your time and energy. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace and love. And as always, be
DJ Mike C on the track.
Cause that be natural.
Lady
I ain't
D.
looking tacky. I keep my game tactful.
Yo,
Yeah, I'm so nappy. Cause that be natural.
The infamous.
I ain't looking tacky. Cause I keep my game tactful.
I'm so pretty, I'm so fabu, I'm so natural, it's like it's a taboo. I'm so filthy, got the tattoo, fucking these bitches like I own ragu. On my business with my platoon, getting these minutes like I'm a typhoon. Y'all is jersey on that cartoon, and I'm sitting on top with these buffaloes. I'm so nappy, I'm so nappy. All these dudes that wanna get at me, I'm so cultured. beauty is the motto that